Nothing is impossible for you. Blind eyes are open, strongholds are broken. I am living by faith. Nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible.
believe that?
Yes.
Why? Oh, we're going to get it. Freedom. That's a good answer for you. Hallelujah. Because of freedom, we believe that. How many of you guys believe there's a God? Why do you believe there's a God? Because of your life. Well, I didn't have your life, so why should I believe there's a God? Oh, man. How many of you guys believe this Bible? You believe it's true? Why do you believe it's true?
Because things really happen.
Are you sure? Because he said it? We need to settle some questions about what we believe. So this morning we're going to have some fun. I'm going to borrow from a friend I've met on YouTube. And his name is Frank Turek. And he goes around to college campuses and high schools and things like that. And he shares on apologetics and philosophy and why we believe what we believe. And I was drawn in. I was reading this book earlier. It's called A.W. Tozer, The Knowledge of the Holy. And it's such an incredible book about saying what you believe about God is the most important foundation of all of your thoughts and thinking in your life. It will chart the course of your life. Who is God? So first we need to ask a couple questions that, again, I'm going to borrow from Frank Turek a little bit here, okay? A lot of my sermon today is going to be from Frank Turek. But many times, students who are raised in the church end up in college confronted by atheist professors. And I'll give you this statistic. Did you know that a college professor has a 5 times more likely chance of being atheist than the average American? Knowledge, the Bible says, makes one mad. Okay? So sometimes, I don't know why, but obviously there's a draw to the educational world for those who believe that there is no God, and they don't just take it upon themselves to tell you facts, they take it upon themselves to tell you their beliefs, even when the facts point in a different direction. The Bible says that it talks a lot about faith, doesn't it? But it doesn't talk about just blindly believing. It doesn't say, hey, just believe there's a really big star out there because I said so. Okay? It doesn't say, hey, just believe that Australia's there because I said so. How many of you guys believe Australia's there? You believe that? How many of you have been to Australia? I believe on a very different account that Australia is there. Unless the airline company duped me, okay, and landed me somewhere else. But, yeah, right? Took me to California, put up signs, said this is Australia, and sent me home. But I was in Australia. I have a different belief than you have about Australia. I know it's there, okay? And because I know it's there, I can have other beliefs. Does that make sense? So, do you believe in God? Do you believe this Bible is true? Do you believe that Jesus was alive on the earth? Why do you believe that? And if you believe that, if we can prove that this morning, that Jesus was alive, there is a God, this word is true, if we can prove that, then I suggest you put your faith in Him. That's where faith comes into being. Jesus didn't call us to be dumb Christians. Okay? He didn't say, hey, just believe believe I'm the God just because I said so. Has there ever been anybody else who showed up and said they are God? Then how do we know which one's the real one? Okay? So we can believe that Christianity is true if we answer 4 questions. If you have a notebook with you this morning, you might want to jot them down. Okay? 4 questions. Does truth exist? Does truth exist? Question number 2, does God exist? So does truth exist? Does God exist? Number 3, do miracles happen? And number 4, is the New Testament true? Okay, you got those written down, those of you who wanted to. You can ask it, notes on it later. I'll hit them all again, okay? Does truth exist? Does God exist? Do miracles happen? And is the New Testament true? We cannot just take some things on blind belief. I'm not saying by blind faith, but we can't just believe everything everybody says. But if truth exists, and if God exists, and if miracles happen, and if the New Testament is true, then I'm pretty certain that Christianity is the only way to know God. Okay? So we're going to attempt to prove that to you this morning. And one of the things we're not going to use, believe it or not, in church is the Bible. Okay? We're not going to use the Bible. We're going to use a thing called logic. We're going to use a thing called reason, something that God gave you and created you with. Makes you different from the animals. Okay? So we're not going to use the Bible this morning to prove these 4 things, but then once we prove those things, we're going to obviously receive God. Okay? Does that make sense? If we can believe that. So, number 1, does truth exist? How many of you guys ever heard somebody say something as silly as, there is no absolute truth? You ever hear somebody say that? What question should you ask them? Are you absolutely sure? That is a self-defeating statement. There is no absolute truth. Well, if you're absolutely sure of that, then that's an absolute truth, which means the statement you just made doesn't exist. So if you say there is no absolute truth and it's correct, it defeats itself. How many of you guys ever heard the saying, there is no truth? There is no truth. What question should you ask them? Is that statement true? Because if it's true, then that statement's not true. Because then there is truth. Okay? So we understand that truth exists. Alright? And a lot of people want to put their ideas on you, and they believe that you should not put their ideas on them. Anybody ever hear that one? If it's true for you, that's true for you, but not for me. Anybody ever hear that statement? Yeah. That's true for you, but not for me. Yeah, try that one at the bank. I'd like $100,000. You don't have that in your account. Well, that's true for you, but not for me. Give me the money. Okay? Doesn't work that way. In fact, true for you, but not for me is a self-defeating truth. The question you ask them, is that true for everyone? Because if it's true for everyone, then true for you and not for me can't be true. Because it's true for everyone. Start thinking about this too long, you will get constipated in the mind, okay? All right. So there is truth, because all these other self-defeating statements destroy themselves and they can't hold up under it. There is truth. Truth does exist, okay? Next question we're going to ask is, does God exist? And one of the ways we're going to go about proving God, we're going to look at God, is we're going to look at the cosmic argument of why God exists. We're going to look at the, I believe it's called the detailed argument, or the perfection argument that God exists. And we're going to look at the moral argument of why God exists, okay? So first we're going to look at the cosmic argument. We're going to look at why does the existence of our cosmos, why does the existence of our universe prove the existence of God? Okay? There was a lot of beliefs that God didn't create the world. A lot of people looking to prove that God was not there, okay? So number one of the rules that we know that God exists based on our cosmos is that the energy in the universe is running out, okay? So you guys know I have a flashlight, right? I carry a flashlight with me everywhere I go. If I had this flashlight sitting here and you walked into the room, sorry, there you go, and you walked into the room and the flashlight was still on, you would know that someone had been here and turned it on within how many hours? This one lasts for about 12 hours. So that means someone was here and turned it on within 12 hours. But if it was here and the battery was dead and you clicked it and it wouldn't turn on, how long ago had I been here? You have no idea. Definitely more than 12 hours ago. Because the battery was dead, the switch had been left on. And we look at the beginnings and we look at the facts and we say, okay, either this was all created by no one or it was created by someone. If I said the statement to you, no one set the dinner table, would you expect to walk into the kitchen and find a dinner table that was set with cups and knives and dishes?
I wish.
No. You wish, right? However, atheists will tell you no one created everything out of nothing. In my logical mind, that would say that nothing was created. but they don't want to believe it, that there was something created. So God created everything. So who is this God then? If this God created, there was a beginning and there was a beginner, he had to create time, space, and matter at the same time. Stephen Hawking said if there was a big bang at the beginning and everything exploded into existence, he says everything, all the laws of physics would have had to come into play the moment everything exploded. All the laws of physics. He said if it didn't, the universe would have either exploded to bits and nothing would have formed, or it would shrink back in on itself. And there would be no life. Does that make sense? So he says everything was created at once. And it wasn't just created at once. They said it wasn't only created once, it was created at once with fine precision. They said they did the calculations. They said if gravity didn't have an exact gravitational pull, that either everything would have blown apart. That's the rule right there when it was all created. Time, space, and matter. If it didn't have that pull, it would have either blown apart or released back into itself. It is a 1 with 40 zeros after it. Those are the chances. Those are the chances of having a mistake. It said it would have to have perfect. So this was not a explosion. This was a governed production. Does that make sense? When God said, let there be light, he spoke the rules of light. He spoke the rules of the universe into existence, and it was governed that everything would happen exactly the way he said it would happen. Okay? If you would walk into your kitchen table, anybody here eat alphabets? Alphabets? You know the Cheerios that look like letters in the alphabet? Okay? Huh? They still have them some places, I think. If you walked into the kitchen table and you saw the box of alphabets spilled over, and in the letters, all the mess, it said, take out the trash, dash, mom. What would you assume?
My mom had fun with my food.
You would assume that the cat knocked the box over, right? You'd be like, that all happened by chance, right? That all happened by accident. That information was just formed. No, we know that information comes from intelligence. Information doesn't come from stupidity. Information comes from intelligence. A rock doesn't produce intelligence. It doesn't produce information. But an intelligent mind can produce information. So we have the cosmic argument. Then we look into the detailed argument of how fine-tuned our universe is. I was looking at this. The universe, they show the universe. Let me back up just real quickly before we go into the details. Did you know the average star in the universe is 30 trillion miles apart? The average distance between stars is 30 trillion miles. If you traveled in a spaceship at 18,000 miles an hour, which is how fast the shuttles go around the Earth, if you traveled in a spaceship at 18,000 miles an hour, it would take you 201,000 years to get to the closest star. 30 trillion miles. If you traveled at 5 miles per second, which is 18,000 miles an hour, it would take you 201,000 years to get to the nearest star. Okay? Now we go back and we look at details of human life. Your life is so precise. Your life is so detailed, there's no way it happened by accident. It is so perfect. So, when Darwin came up with his ideas of evolution, he said that we all came from a single-celled organism. Right? What was it called? Do you know? An amoeba. Do you remember those things? Remember those in science class? Little amoeba, little single cell. I mean, come on, how hard could it be to create that guy? Right? One little single cell. Well, they didn't know what was in an amoeba. Today we know what's in an amoeba. If you take the DNA out of an amoeba, okay? You guys know what DNA is? It's called information, right? Yeah. If you take the DNA out of an amoeba, do you know how much information's in one amoeba DNA? How much information it takes to create one amoeba that does what it's supposed to do? It would be the equivalent of 1,100 encyclopedia books. That much information is jammed into one amoeba. So did that information just get there by accident? I thought the Cheerios on your table couldn't spell take out the trash by accident. Much less 1,100 encyclopedia books worth of information. Okay? So we know from that information, if there's information, information comes from a source. Information comes from intelligence. So we know that the creator of all things was intelligent, right? He had to have the intelligence to create it. He was outside of space. He was outside of time. He was outside of matter. He is not matter. Some people say that the universe created itself. The problem with saying the universe created itself is that the universe would have had to exist to create itself. But you can't exist before you're created to create yourself. Okay, so whatever created it has to be outside of it. Alright? So there's all this stuff, all these details about this is why God exists. Atheists and agnostics have both said the only evidence that points to the creation of the world or the creation of life is the Genesis account. There is no other account, there's no other story that points to how the universe was created or how life was created. They've said, they've agreed that is the closest account. However, many times if you ask an atheist or an agnostic, if we can prove to you that God exists, would you love Him? They'll answer very quickly, absolutely not. Well then what are you looking for? If you're looking for truth, and we told you we could prove truth, would you believe it? They say no. Then you're not really looking for truth, are you? You're looking to prove what you believe. Whereas truth is outside of what I believe. Truth exists, and I need to find it. Which leads us to our next argument, a moral argument. Why does God exist? Because there's morals. How many of you guys know anything that's absolutely right or absolutely wrong? Anybody know that?
Yeah.
What's wrong, Steph?
Murder.
Murder's wrong. Why?
What?
Because why?
God says it is.
Because God says it is. That's a great answer. But can you prove that morality exists without God? Can you prove that murder's wrong without God? So Stephanie says murder's wrong. I say, well, murder's right. How will we ever distinguish between the two of us?
You'll be in jail.
The majority. Well, what if the majority of people say it's okay to kill the Jews? They did it. And we stopped them. Why did we stop them? Why did we think it would be okay for us to go in and stop them? Somebody's going to have to use the word. Go ahead, say it. It wouldn't be
Right.
It wouldn't be right, or it wouldn't be good. Well, who told you what good is? How do you know what's good? If you don't know that, if there's no God, if there's no external measuring tool, how would we know what's good, what's bad? One of the most important things, I know I said a lot of science, blah, blah, blah today, okay? And I love science. Some of you guys are like, okay? I want you to understand this. If you don't remember anything else that I said today, I want you to remember, though you might not have the answers, there are answers. And if you know that, next year, there's going to be a graduation of a large group of teenagers from this church. Okay? There's like 6 or 7 of them that are graduating. And there's a good chance a bunch of them are going to go off to college. And there's a story. One of the reasons is Frank Turek is in the ministry that he's in, going to churches and youth groups and colleges and teaching this type of teaching. He has a friend whose daughter was like model citizen in the youth group. Do you know what I mean? She was the all-star. She was at her school running a Bible study. She was at church. She was part of the worship team. She was all this stuff. She went off to college, and within 4 weeks, she called her dad and said, I don't believe in God anymore. Why didn't she believe? Because she didn't have logical understanding on why we believe. We just took everything on faith. It's why my parents told me what to believe, so I believed it. And as soon as I was away from home, and an atheist professor, she said, we have an atheist teaching the New Testament class in our college. So he obviously taught to unbelieve. He taught people to not believe. And he targeted specifically Christians and called them fools for believing. The problem is she didn't have to have all the answers. What she needed to know was there are answers to be had. Okay? I don't have to know all about how, chemicals work and everything else to believe in modern day medicine. I just have to know that there are chemicals that do certain things. Does that make sense? If a king wanted to send a message to another king, what did he do? He didn't have email or text. He sent a messenger with a letter. Now he wanted to make sure nobody impersonated him, because that would be really bad, right? Like, what if the guy showed up and said, hey, King so-and-so says you're a jerk, right? That would cause a war. So he wanted to make sure that nobody impersonated him. Don't you go and change my letter. Don't you go and copy my letter. Don't you impersonate me and say something I didn't say. So what did he do? He put a seal on it. And that seal had to be something so unique, so special. It could not be copied. It could not be forged in any way. Do you know what God has as a seal? Signs and wonders and miracles. These are the seal of God. These are the things that tell us that He is speaking. And if we look in the Old Testament, we look at Moses' life. Moses was surrounded with signs and wonders and miracles. If we look at Elijah and Elisha, their life was surrounded with signs, wonders, and miracles. If we look at Jesus, His life was surrounded with signs, wonders, and miracles. Why? Because there was a new message coming to Israel, and Israel had to know it was from the one true God. So He confirms His word with signs, wonders, and miracles. We as the Church of Jesus Christ, why is it important that we walk in signs, wonders, and miracles? We're here to bring a new message to the body of Christ, to the world around us, and say Jesus is alive and He is well. And they say, prove it! And you lay hands on the sick and they get healed, and people take notice. Why? Because of signs, wonders, and miracles. Does the enemy, why did people came against Jesus' lordship? Because they said, He calls Himself God, and He does these miracles. We need to undo what people believe in Him. Why did they believe in Him? Because of the miracles. So you know what they said? They said, well, this dude casts out demons by the prince of demons. They said his power comes from the devil. So we're gonna twist what they believe. Right? How many of you guys remember when Moses threw a stick down and became a serpent? And the Egyptian Pharaoh's magicians went and did the same thing. Their sticks also became serpents. But God took Moses's and ate the other three. Come on. Why? Because He says, I'm the one that's doing the sign. I'm the one that's bringing the message. When Moses said to God, he says, who should I tell Pharaoh sent me? He said, tell him the I am sent you. In other words, I am the self-defining, sufficient, I am outside of space and time. I am powerful and I am intelligent, and I created all things from nothing, and I will twist you if I have to get what I want. Let my people go. Come on. Pharaoh was stubborn in his heart, so God did miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle and said, I am the God who created everything. Let my people go. And Pharaoh still hardened his heart, and God killed all the firstborn children of Pharaoh's house, of all of Egypt. And then Pharaoh said, okay, take the people. Why? Because there's a God, and He can prove Himself. Any God who cannot prove Himself is not worth serving. So the Bible says, greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second one, make no graven image, right? The 10 Commandments, out of the 10 Commandments. Make no graven image. Why? Because if this God is so huge and so holy and so separate and outside of space, time, and matter, then any representation of Him will have to be limited and will not fully express His nature. So He says, don't even try to copy who I am. You can't. You will fail every time. And that's what A.W. Tozer talks about in the knowledge of the holy. And I wanted us to sort of wrap our minds around that this morning. There is a universe that was created by a God who is outside of it. There is something so great and so holy about this God. And then we look at Him and we realize that He came to earth to love us. To love us. And He put His Son in human flesh. How can He do that? Can a virgin conceive? Yes, if the God who created everything out of nothing did that miracle, then any other miracle is possible. Can He stop the Red Sea from flowing down? Yes. Can He split it? Yes. Can He raise the dead? Yes. Can He make the blind see? Yes. Can He make water into wine? Yes. If He can create everything from nothing, then He can manipulate the anything. Because He's God. And if He can't, He's not God. Times, you know what I'm talking about, right? And you tell that guy, I don't like you. We just friends. You know the just friends card? We just friends, right? And the guy's like, if the guy would say, then I'm going to force you to love me. Does that work? No. No, why? It's a logical inconsistency. Love cannot be forced. Love is only love if it has free choice and a free will. It can't be forced. In fact, many of you would say, if you love me, let me alone. Let me go. Guess what? Guess what? There are some people who do not want to be in God's presence. And if you spend your whole life here, avoiding Him like the plague, He will do exactly what that girlfriend says, and He will love you and let you go. If you love me, let me alone. Because it would never be right. Some guy likes Steph, and she hates his guts, and we force her to be with him. It would not happen. That would not be love. It would not be loving Steph. That would be a self-serving motive. And God will never force anyone into His presence that doesn't want anything to do with Him. So if He did, you would accuse Him of not being loving. All these people jammed into heaven who don't want to be there, you would never allow it. Okay? So we need to understand who God is. We need to understand what truth is. And we need to have more than just a blind faith as to where it came from and why it exists and why you believe what you believe. Amen? All right.